And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what? China. All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Exactly. Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
The lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. They want us to sell our souls to barter profit. Like God's property, it's hard to market. So we steady to aim, keep your eyes on target. Cause when you got to drive, yeah, they'd rather you park it. But I don't valet, you ain't getting these keys. I'm keeping closed hands, I'm on bended knee. I'm just a reflection, dealing with 8 sections. Art mixed with life, you can feel the convection. Your lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said
The same people that have stripped us of our identity and labeled us as a color have told us what it means to be black and the vernacular that we're supposed to have.
Most Egyptologists and anthropologists, archaeologists of the Eurocentric persuasion will say that Egypt is in Africa. They had to concede that, but then they still draw the line by saying that they weren't Africans like that. In other words, they weren't dark-skinned people. And of course, this is all part of the Great Deception. And the reality is that if they give up Egypt, ancient Kemet, if they give that up and say that that was a part of black Africa, then they will also have to give up Israel. And that's why they draw the line at Egypt, because if they give up Egypt, they've got to give up Israel.
Now, we're going to go over here, and I'm going to show you where Israel sits on the African tectonic plate, which means that Israel is northeast Africa. Now, when we look at this map, this is the Sinai, okay? This is the Red Sea. This is Egypt. This is the Sinai. This is Israel. All right, this is Saudi Arabia over here. Now, if you see this in Hebrew, it says Haluach Afrikani, the African plate. Here it is right here. Israel is sitting right here. Israel is sitting on the Haluach Afrikani, which means that Israel is northeast Africa.
Without question, we are in Northeast Africa. We are landlocked to Egypt, with the exception of the Suez Canal, which was a man-made ditch, a boundary now between, in fact, it's not even really a boundary anymore since Egypt has reclaimed the Sinai Peninsula. But nevertheless, even those of us who are Pan-Africanists in our thinking and Afrocentric, we forget and we leave off that portion of Northeast Africa and don't want to claim anything beyond that.
Europeans classified this area as a Middle East. You know, and then since this the Middle East, the other question, where the Middle West? Where the Middle North and where the Middle South? They don't have no geographical terms like that.
The same people that have stripped us of our identity and labeled us as a color have told us what it means to be black and the vernacular that we're supposed to have.
Wells comes face to face with the man he's been searching for. A new portrait of the common ancestor of every man today. Adam. Without the skull, we can't know for sure what Adam looked like. But a combination of genetic evidence, Bender's forensic skills, and cutting-edge computer software suggests he looked something like this. Thousands of years after the Bible, and hundreds of years after Michelangelo, we have a whole new face for Adam.
The same people that have stripped us of our identity and labeled us as a color have told us what it means to be black and the vernacular that we're supposed to have.
Their bones were discovered in Kafse caves near Nazareth in Galilee in 1933. 13 fragile skeletons, one a woman, a tiny baby at her feet. When these bones were first uncovered, they were the oldest complete modern human skeletons ever found.
The numerous skeletons that have been found in caves in Israel at the sites of Kafse and Shkul show us that there were modern humans outside of Africa over 100,000 years ago.
Planned Parenthood was made by Margaret Sanger, a known eugenics, with the KKK to control the Jew population. When I say Jew, I mean the 12 lost tribes of Judah, the blood of Christ, who the people known as the race black really are.
Hitler was, and the Nazis, of course, expanded on Margaret Sanger's approach to eugenics, right? Eugenics was a movement that was born in the United States under hard doctrines of racism with the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah in the African-American community in this country, right? To eliminate them.
We're finishing now part 2, chapter 2. And what we've said so far is that people have free will and their actions are, some are good and some are evil. And by the way, the Rambam writes explicitly that everyone has some good actions and some bad actions. Everyone. Everyone. And he takes it for granted that there'll be a variety. We talked about the fact that this world and the next world are asymmetrical. The next world is where the majority of a person's actions, which determine his identity, are compensated. For the righteous, they exist in the world to come and they're rewarded. And for those whose major complexion is black, are excluded from the world to come.
And you know what else, Jim? I just want to say this to our Christian friends, just to call it as it is and say it straight out, you guys are worshiping one Jew. That's a mistake. You should be worshiping every single one of us because we all die for your sins every single day. And that's exactly what's going on here. Yeah. We're all God's firstborn, and we're dying for your sins right now because the Jewish people in the land of Israel are the bulwark against the orcs. Mm-hmm. Okay? The orcs are coming not to a theater near you, but to your home.
אל תנפושי לנסוע! אל תנסוע עם פושי! לכי את והוא! תלכי מפה! תלכי! אל תנסוע עם פושי! לכי! לא מתביישת!
I just had a rabbi give me an analogy. He said, look, imagine you left your home and then someone came and occupied it and then you try to get it back and then they went to the judge. Have you heard some of these analogies? Maybe you can.
Yeah, that's assuming that, that's taking it into a place which I don't usually go. That's making the assumption that today's Jews are really the descendants of the ancient Hebrews that used to live in that part of the world some 3,000 years ago. That's making the assumption that today's Jews are really the descendants of the ancient Hebrews that used to live in that part of the world some 3,000 years ago.
That's making the assumption that today's Jews are really the descendants of the ancient Hebrews that used to live in that part of the world some 3,000 years ago.
This story begins in October 1949, 1 year after Israel's formation. This is when Netanyahu was born, the second child of a historian. His paternal grandfather was a rabbi and a Zionist writer. His name was Nathan Milikowski. Later in life, he Hebraized his surname from Milikowski to Netanyahu, a name which means God has given.
This is Yair Netanyahu's DNA test that has been leaked. You can see right there his Y DNA is RM198. Descendants of RM198 come from Poland, Russia, Germany, and other European countries. Does this look Semitic to you? Does this look Middle Eastern?
That's what the Zionists did, except instead of a baseball team, they went to try to convince the Jews that the Jewish people are a nation, like France and like Spain. We'll get a land, that's Israel, that's our stadium. We'll get baseball bats and balls, we'll create a language. They sat down to create a language because nations need languages. They sat down to create a language because nations need languages. They sat down to create a language. They sat down to create a language. They sat down to create a language. You can convert to Judaism. You can't convert to a blood family. You cannot convert to a race. Judaism is a religion. That's all it is.
Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you.
I want to say peace and blessings to you guys. Hope and pray all is well. And just want to get right into the lesson. I know we had a lot of issues last night with the live, and so I want to do another live just to kind of land back on what we covered last night, but give you more information. So we're going to get right into it, and I encourage you guys to click that thumb coming in and going out this live feed. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed to the channel. Share the video. I'm going to cover a lot, as much as I can over the next couple of hours. But again, let's get right into it. We're going to keep it pretty simple tonight and get right into the information. And the only thing I ask is for those that are coming into the chat, or you may come in late, listen to the information before forming an opinion. Please do not troll inside the chat and post disrespectful comments. It's okay that we have disagreements, but it is not good to come into go into the chat and troll and post all kinds of foul language that can jeopardize this channel. So moderators, you guys know what to do when it comes to that type of behavior. Again, if we are all supposed to be following the Most High, then there shouldn't be a problem when we have disagreements. And I'm pretty confident not everything I'm going to share tonight you're going to agree with. But one thing I will do is I show sources. You know, tackle the sources, not opinions. But with that being said, listen with intelligence. The ancient Hebrew pronunciation of the word is Shama'a. The Israeli pronunciation of it is Shammai. All right, which means listen with intelligence. It means be obedient. It means discernment. All right. So family, let's go ahead and get into it. We got a lot to cover. So let's, without further ado, no more delays. Let's get right into it. So you guys remember the viral interview that Tucker Carlson had with Mike Huckabee. And so he asked some critical questions, and we're going to really just present some information here. We're going to land back on what we shared last night, but I'm going to take it a step further, get into some prophecies as far as according to the scriptures, and then also give you some historical information on the DNA testing, on why taking a DNA test over in Israel can only be administered, approved by way of the government approval. You cannot just go and take a test. You cannot do a 23andMe. You cannot do any of those things. You have to go through the courts to get an actual DNA test. It has to be approved by them. So let's go ahead and get into it and explain why Tucker Carlson took the approach that he took towards Mike Huckabee. Let's get into it. All right. So again, Not True Israel, take the DNA test. All right. And feel free, everyone that's logged in, just type in take the test. If we all in agreement with that, just type in take the test. All right. Just type in take the test. All right. As we progress, just type in take the test. So if you're in agreement with Tucker Carlson assessment, just type in take the test. All right. Take the test. All right. So Not True Israel. All right. Just continue to type in take the test. And even if you see some trolls coming in, type in take the test, because more than likely they're trolling for these guys here. All right. So let's go and get into it, family. Let's go and get into it. So let's start with what we covered last night. I want to just kind of use this as a refresher, and all of this is connected with this. Is why it's so imperative to really study, free from these religious systems. Study the scriptures, study the holy text, right? From beginning to end. Start with the first 5 books of the Bible, which is called the law, referred to as the law, and then the prophets. Study. Start with the book of Genesis. Start with the very first verse, free from these religious influence. All right. So let's go to break this down, because if you don't read those first 5 books, you're going to be lost on a lot of things. Okay. You can't even teach Apostle Paul's letters if you don't study the first 5 books of the Bible and the prophets, because that's the only thing that Paul taught from, as well as the testimonies of the disciples. So you cannot literally say that you understand Paul's works and you have not read those first 5 books of the Bible. You cannot say you truly understand Christ's words if you don't read and understand the first 5 books of the Bible as well as the prophets. Again, that's all he studied from. That's all that he taught from. Okay, so let's get into it. What is the Great Israel Project? The phrase Greater Israel emerged in the late 19th and early 20th century during the development of Zionist thought. Thought it was not formally articulated. Let me read this again. I'm fumbling on my words tonight. The phrase Greater Israel emerged in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, during the development of Zionist thought, though it was not formally articulated as an official state doctrine by early Zionist leaders such as Theodor Herzl. All right. So Herzl primarily advocated for a secure Jewish homeland through diplomatic means, focusing on Ottoman Palestine rather than a Nile to Euphrates empire. And when you understand the Ottoman invasion, this is dealing with the Turkic people. Same thing with the Arab invasions, the multiple. This is dealing with a Turkic people. We are not dealing with the ancient people that was there prior to. We're not dealing with, some would think that Palestine is synonymous to Philistine. They're not the same. The Roman government created Palestine purposely to remove the identity of the ancient Israelites from the area. Now, Philistine, that is a Hamitic people. You can look it up. You see Philistia under the description, under the descendants of Ham. All right. But nevertheless, Herzl primarily advocated for a secure Jewish homeland through diplomatic means, focusing on Ottoman Palestine rather than a Nile to Euphrates empire. So later, nationalist and revisionist factions discussed broader territorial aspirations, including land on both sides of the Jordan. And critics of Israeli settlement policies eventually popularized the Greater Israel Project to describe perceived expansionist ambitions. Let me say this again. Later, nationalist and revisionist factions discussed broader territorial aspirations, including land on both sides of the Jordan, and critics of Israeli settlement policies eventually popularized the term Greater Israel Project to describe perceived expansionist ambitions. So what is the Greater Israel Project map? Let me show you how that map looks. This is the map, the Greater Israel map. And you're going to notice here that part of that Greater Israel is to take land from Egypt, because you see how it was highlighted here, right? To take ownership of this whole territory. And it's important, as you heard in the video clip that I played, the importance of the Suez Canal, right? This man-made canal. Israel wants to take ownership. They want to take ownership of all of this territory. All right. For those that may have missed the initial video, let me just go ahead and play the video of the importance of understanding the Suez Canal. Let me play it real quick and we'll continue on. Let me play it one more time.
Most Egyptologists and anthropologists, archaeologists of the Eurocentric persuasion will say that Egypt is in Africa. They had to concede that, but then they still draw the line by saying that they weren't Africans like that. In other words, they weren't dark-skinned people. And of course, this is all part of the Great Deception. And the reality is that if they give up Egypt, ancient Kemet, if they give that up and say that that was a part of Black Africa, then they will also have to give up Israel. And that's why they draw the line at Egypt, because if they give up Egypt, they've got to give up Israel.
Now, we're going to go over here, and I'm going to show you where Israel sits on the African tectonic plate, which means that Israel is Northeast Africa.
All right. So you guys heard it. You see the importance, right, of this. And, understand the Middle East did not, it's a modern construct that was created in, I believe, 1903, right? That's not an ancient term. You will not find that on any of the old maps. The Middle East, Northeast Africa, right? All of that is Northeast Africa. It sits on the same tectonic plate, right? There was no such thing as the Levant, right? That is a 15th century term. There was no such thing as Mediterranean. There was no such thing as, what's the other one? You have the Mediterranean, you have the Fertile Crest, you have the Levant, all these purposely created to remove what they deem to be key areas away from Africa, right? Because of the racist baseline of understanding of and the things that they pushed regarding African nations, African territories, right? Which is Egypt is in Africa. Israel is in Africa. All of this area will be considered, as you see here, all of this would be Africa. All right. This is Africa. But anyway, let's continue, family. Let's continue. I don't want to get too far into that. I want to make sure we get as much as we can in tonight. But this is the Greater Israel map. And so I'm going to let you hear from Netanyahu, right? And he's going to give you a display on what that map is. So Netanyahu invokes Deuteronomy 28 as he explained the Greater Israel Project before the UN. All right. So this is the video right here. I'm not going to play it through my PowerPoint presentation. I'm just going to stream it directly from here through StreamYard because of, I know it's a lot of things that happened last night, and hopefully we don't experience the same thing of them trying to kick me out. So listen to what Netanyahu has to say.
Ladies and gentlemen, as Israel defends itself against Iran in the Seven Front War, the line separating the blessing and the curse could not be more clear. This is the map I presented here last year. It's a map of a blessing. It shows Israel and its Arab partners forming a land bridge connecting Asia and Europe between the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. Across this bridge, we will lay rail lines, energy pipelines, fiber optic cables, and this will serve the betterment of 2 billion people. Now look at this second map. It's a map. Look at the second map. It's a map of a curse. It's a map of an arc of terror that Iran has created and imposed from the Indian Ocean to the Mediterranean. Iran's malignant arc has shut down international waterways. It cuts off trade. It destroys millions, destroys nations from within, and inflicts misery on millions. On the one hand, a bright blessing, a future of hope. On the other hand, a dark future of despair.
And so, family, it's important for you guys to understand the scriptures for yourself. You have to understand what he's referring to. If you read Deuteronomy 27 and 28, you'll understand everything that he's stating here, everything he's saying here is an absolute lie. It's not biblical, right? It is not biblical what he's displaying here. Okay. Now, for those that may not know this, the law of the curses is in chapter 27 of Deuteronomy. Those are not the curses. I mean, those are the curses, right? Excuse me. Now, when you get to chapter 28, it begins with the blessings, right? The first 15 verses, and then from verse 16 to 68, you're dealing with the consequences for breaking the law, the curses. And what he stated in the video and the prompt that you see here, it's not biblical. It's not biblical. Number one, especially when we understand who he is, who they are. All right. So let's continue. Benjamin Netanyahu is holding two maps labeled the curse and the blessings. On the curse map, the shaded black territory includes Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and parts of Gaza. So the question is, who is this guy? Who is this guy? Who is Benjamin Netanyahu? You guys already know this, but I'll play it one more time so that way I don't have to articulate this. I'll just play it so that way you can hear the video of exactly who he is. He is not a descendant of the territory. He's not an ancient Israelite. He's an Israeli. That's the purpose of using the word Israeli, because you could be born in the territory, but doesn't mean that you originated there, that you're indigenous to there. All right, so let's play this video clip again for those that are listening, watching for the first time.
This story begins in October 1949, 1 year after Israel's formation. This is when Netanyahu was born, the second child of a historian. His paternal grandfather was a rabbi and a Zionist writer. His name was Nathan Milikowski. Later in life, he Hebraized his surname from Milikowski to Netanyahu, a name which means God has given.
This is Yair Netanyahu's DNA test that has been leaked. You can see right there his Y DNA is RM198. Descendants of RM198 come from Poland, Russia, Germany, and other European countries. Does this look Semitic to you? Does this look Middle Eastern?
When I show you what I'm about to show you, your mind will be blown. You're going to be blindsided. Every single Israeli prime minister has a fake name. Did you know that? I was just talking about Ben Gurion. Do you know what his original name is? It's Gruen. Gruen. He changed it to make it sound more Jewish and sound more Middle Eastern. Do you know what Netanyahu's real name is? It's not Netanyahu, it's Milkovsky. I swear to God, go and look it up. You'll find Milkovsky. That's his real name. These are, remember what Israelis are. Israelis are European Jews. They don't come from Palestine, but they want you to make you believe. They want to make believe and make you believe that they come from this area, that they are indigenous to the land, that they're so Jewish, right? Even though they have no connection. So they change their names.
All right. Sorry about that, family. I had to get me something to drink while that video was playing. But again, you guys, the videos that I shared explains who Netanyahu is. So again, Benjamin Netanyahu's father, Benjamin Netanyahu, that's the name that he changed it to. Originally, Milkovsky, who was born in Warsaw, Poland in 1910. Which this territory was under Russian control. He was a prominent historian, a Zionist activist, and author who immigrated to Mandatory Palestine with his family in 1920. He adopted the surname Netanyahu. All right. And let me see this video clip here. Let me see what this video clip is. Yeah, you guys already saw that. Don't need to play it again. So Benjamin Netanyahu's father is Polish, but according to some, right, he and all the Israelis are Edomites. Now, I want to make this clear. I've been teaching this for years that the Edomites are not the progenitors of white people. Let me make that clear. I've been teaching this for years, and you could go back over the lessons in the playlist, starting with one of the lessons that I taught titled Anyone or Anything But the Negroes, the Martian Christ versus the Negro Messiah. So I want to make sure, because I know in these YouTube streets, people could take their keyboards and create legs and start creating narratives that are not there. So I want to make this clear. I've been teaching on this for quite some time and even made some recent Facebook posts about me being frustrated of this notion that the Edomites is the progenitors of the white man or the Caucasian man or the Romans and all that. All right. So Benjamin Netanyahu's father is Polish, but according to some, he and all the Israelis, they're Edomites. That's what many teach. So Benjamin Netanyahu, right, and the Edomites. Let's go ahead and deal with this real quick. Just a quick source here. I'm not going to get too deep with the ruddy thing, but I want to make sure that you guys understand what ruddy means. All right. This is not a source that I created. This is coming from the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia, 1915. And I'm going to zoom in. I'm not just going to use the page rip. Let me just zoom in so you guys can see this. And I'm going to read directly from the source. Ruddy is the form taken by the adjective red when used as a term of praise of the human skin. And this is its use in the Bible. In other words, the Hebrew and Greek words are all usually words for red or to be read. The dark-skinned Hebrews found great beauty in a clear complexion. Let me say that one more time. The dark-skinned Hebrews found great beauty in a clear complexion. Let me say it one more time. I have to say it in slow-mo. The dark-skinned Hebrews found great beauty in a clear complexion. For the people in the back. All right. So this is clear. And I will do a teaching again on the Spanish Inquisition. And I will prove again that when you look at the sources from that time, the Israelites, starting with those in Spain, were referred to as being most dark, very dark, all the way to the Israelites in Italy, right? This is where you get Amelia Bassano, the famous poet. She was an Israelite. She was a dark melanated woman who was comparable to the Moors. Her and her family from a community of Israelites living in Italy. Okay, so I just want to just give you this source here just for those that want to continue to kick against the pricks. So again, I'll read it again. Ruddy is the form taken by the adjective red when used as a term of praise of the human skin. And this is its use in the Bible. The Hebrew and Greek word are all usual words for red or to be red. The dark-skinned Hebrews found great beauty in a clear complexion. All right, again, just reiterating it again. The dark-skinned Hebrews found great beauty in a clear complexion. That's the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia. You can download this encyclopedia for free. Just go to archive.gov. All right, so this means that Esau nor his descendants are the progenitors of the so-called white man that many teach. But I can't just stop there, because this is some of the passages that are used to try to justify this notion, like Jeremiah 49:10, right? But I have made Esau Asha, or Asha, excuse me, or Ashawa, however you want to pronounce it, if you want to pronounce the Y at the end, Asha, bear, I have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, Shaddad, and his brethren and his neighbors, and he is not. But the key is, it says his seed is spoiled. And many take this as if it's the text is saying that Esau's seeds is spoiled in terms of mixing and meshing with other communities. That's not what this text is making reference to. Many use this passage to justify their teaching that Esau is the white man. So what does spoil mean? You know, what does it mean from a Hebraic school of thought, right? Shaddad, right? Does it mean mesh? Well, let's pull it up here. Quick source. I got other sources, but let's start, just keep it simple here. The key is it says to ravage. That has nothing to do with mixing and meshing, intimacy. It means to ravage, dead, destroy, oppress, robber. We see here spoil, spoiler, waste, lay waste. So this has nothing to do with the bloodlines mixing. So this passage or judgment is about the Edomites' loss of independent national power, ceased as a sovereign kingdom, become Idumea under the foreign dominance, and they were eventually integrated into Judah's governance. So this judgment and the word Shaddad does not suggest or support claims that Edom would mix or absorb into every nation and genetically vanish. That is not what this passage is saying. So did Esau become white? Did he become the white man, so to speak? I'm just using the institution of race, the constructs. But did Esau become the white man by being conquered, right? By being conquered and being completely absorbed into the Horites. Excuse the typo and how I put this sentence together. Well, let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 12. These are passages that are used. The Horims, in other words, Horites, right? In most transliterations, you'll see Horites. Horims or Horites, same people, also dwelt in Seir before time. And this is another confusion here. Not getting into it right now, but we'll get there eventually. But the children of Esau, Ashah or Ashawa, succeeded them when they had destroyed them from before them, and dwelt in their stead, as Israel did unto the land of his possession, which Yahweh gave unto them. All right, so this is a passage that is used. It's pretty obvious. It pretty much tells us what happened here. It says that the Edomites destroyed the Horites, kicked them out of the territory. All right, the scriptures are pretty clear. So this means that Esau nor his descendants are the progenitors of the so-called white man. Okay. Again, the dark-skinned Hebrews found great beauty in a clear complexion. So how did the Edomites supposedly become Romans? Have you guys heard that one before? Let me just look at the chat real quick. Have you guys heard that one before? That Esau became the Romans, or the Romans is the Edomites. Okay, have you guys heard that one before? If you heard that one before, type 1. If you heard that the Edomites, the Romans are the Edomites. Have you heard that one before? Type 1. All right, looking here. All right, so looking here at the chat, you guys are familiar with this. Some of you guys heard this before. And let me give you the source of where this comes from, because I'm going to tell you here and I'm going to say this emphatically. This has nothing to do with the law, the prophets, the Apocrypha, the time of the Maccabees, none of that. This has nothing to do with 70 AD, the situation there. Everything comes afterwards when you start getting into these type of doctrines. And I'm going to show you sources real quick as we progress here. All right. So how did the Edomites supposedly become the Romans? How did the Edomites supposedly become the Greeks? Let's go to the Jewish Encyclopedia, volume 5, page 41. Let's see what they say here, because you're going to see who originated that logic. Right? We're going to highlight this area of the text. This is what we're going to read from. Edom, Idumea. The name Edom is used by the Talmudists for the Roman Empire. Now, guys, when you start dealing with the Talmudists, understand that the Talmud is not a document from the antiquities. The Talmud began its conception between the 3rd and 5th century. Now, they would teach you that when Moses was given the Torah, he was given 2 Torahs, a written Torah and an oral Torah or oral law that explains how to carry out the Torah. That's what they would teach you. And that according to them, right, they supposedly, right, saw how the Romans were persecuting and decided to write it down between the 3rd and 5th century. But a bulk of it was written when you get to the 8th and 9th century, that period. So that's what they teach. Okay. So when you see Talmudists, that's what it's referring to, the Talmud. You have 2 Talmuds as far as groups, the Babylonian and the Jerusalem. But anyway, not getting into all of that. So the name Edom is used by the Talmudists for the Roman Empire. and they applied to Rome every passage of the Bible referring to Edom or to Esau. Let me say this again so you make sure you understand, right? They applied Rome to every passage of the Bible that referred to Edom or to Esau, right? So make a note of that. They are the ones that created this association. And then it goes on to say here, Rome under the name of Edom is compared to a boar, and the symbolic name seer was used by the poets of the Middle Ages, not only for Rome. So this is also saying that the word seer, right, was not only used for what many have used to connect it to other things we're going to cover here in a second, but nevertheless, right, you know, seer, you have Mount Seir, but also we see seer is being used what? Symbolically, as a symbolism. All right? All right. Let me do this. I'm gonna say this here, family. Moderators, if anyone is being disrespectful, calling people fools and all of that, kick them out the chat. And I just caught something here. I didn't see the whole exchange, but put them out. All right. If they give them a warning to some, if it's over the top curse words, just completely kick them out. All right. All right. And I'm going to say this to the question, and I'm not going to get sidetracked. I'm just going to explain this real quick. 2nd Ezra 6 and 9. This is where you're going to have to understand two key words: idioms and personification. Let me say that again: idioms and personification, right? You have metaphors, right? That's basically when you start getting into, when you think about idioms, for example, idioms this is where you get, think about the phrase, "It's raining cats and dogs outside." That's an idiom. Right? You know, it's not literally raining dogs and cats from the skies. But then you have personification, adding gender to objects. Like many of us would use our cars or use a reference of a person, or say he or she, adding gender to it, or like the sun, like the moon. When you get to this passage where it says Jacob and Esau are the beginning and the end of the world, this is dealing with what? This is synonymous to what? Good and evil. This is not dealing with the literal bloodlines. This is simply saying good and evil. You'll see this in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. The seed of the serpent versus the seed of the woman. We know that when we get to understanding that, we know that this is not dealing with a bloodline that's coming out of the seed of the serpent. This is dealing with good and evil. So that's why I want to make sure you guys understand, because you have to understand these key words, starting with, again, idiom and personification. This is where we get into the word enmity. The ancient Hebrew pronunciation is ayab or ayaba, right? Which means act of hostility. All right. So I want to make sure you guys understand this. That is being used as a metaphor, synonymous with good and evil. All right. Appreciate the question. So let's go ahead and continue. I just saw that and I thought I'd respond to it, but I don't want to get too sidetracked in that. I'll do a special lesson. Actually, I do have some lessons up on there titled Act of Hostility. All right. But anyway, let's continue here. So it says here the symbolic name seer was used by the poets of the Middle Ages, not only for Rome. Okay. But also for Christianity. On this account, the word Edom was often expunged by the censor and another name substituted. All right, but let's continue. I don't want to read all of this, but here's another key point here. The Talmudists, however, made an exception in favor of Antonius, excuse me if I'm butchering it up, Antoninus, right? Pious, whom they assured would attain paradise because he had not acted in the manner of Esau. Okay. So, however, look at this here. Explaining Obadiah verse 2 says that Edom had neither written nor spoken language, right? Let me say this again. However, explaining, let me see if this is the first line. Yeah. Aboda, Zara, 10a. However, explaining Obadiah verse 2 says that Edom had neither written nor spoken language. This is inconsistent with its application to Rome. Now, family, if you go to Obadiah verse 2, it has nothing to do with a written or spoken language regarding Edom. Doesn't even mention it. Look it up. Just look it up for yourself. I'm not going to pull it up here for the sake of time. This is inconsistent with with its application to Rome. So this is saying that, in a nutshell, the inconsistency of trying to say that Edom is Rome is one of the arguments that someone is trying to explain in this source, is saying that Edom neither had written or spoken language. It said that if you're trying to say Esau is Rome, the Edomites are Rome, Rome has a written language, Rome has a spoken language. So that's what this is saying right here. All right. But anyway, so the claim that Edom replaced or became the Romans is not supported by biblical, Second Temple, Greco-Roman, or early historical sources. You won't find this written anywhere. You will not find this anywhere. Okay? All right? All right. Let me see who did. Make sure I got the. All right. Did I get the right one? I think I hit the wrong one. All right. I think I banned the wrong person. My apologies. Let me see if I could get you back in. Baritone Edwards, I hit the wrong one. I was kicking this other person out there. My apologies. I was kicking, not Baritone, I was kicking Baritone out because of the disrespectful comment. You can agree or disagree, but you're not going to be disrespectful here. Pimpin Production, I accidentally hit you. After the live is over, I will, I would unblock you here. I accidentally hit you, but I was actually kicking out this Barrington Edwards person with the complete disrespect. All right. All right, moderators, if you see anyone being disrespectful, kick them out. All right. Okay. All right. So I'm going to say this again. I'm not getting deep into Esau. I can, right? I have. If you want to see the full teaching, go back over the lesson last night and I go further into the Esau by using King David as a reference point. But look for the lesson titled Anyone But the Negro, the Martian Christ versus the Hebrew Messiah. And I go into details with that. All right. So I'm going to say this again, moderators. Just start blocking people because we're not going to let people come into the chat and be disrespectful. You won't go to the 1948ers channels and be disrespectful. You're not going to do that here. So if there's anyone being disrespectful, kick them out the chat. Put them out. I'll say that again, and we'll get going here. And if I need to, give wrenches, I'll give wrenches if we need more. All right. So let me just make sure you guys understand that. Okay. All right. So The claim that Edom replaced or became the Romans is not supported by biblical, Second Temple, Greco-Roman, or early historical sources. I'm giving sources, not opinions. All right. So in the Hebrew scriptures, Edom refers to the descendants of Esau located in Mount Seir, while Rome emerges centuries later in the Italian peninsula with its own documented Italic, Latin, and Etruscan origins. Right? The scriptures makes no reference to Esau and the Romans being connected at all. No ancient Roman historian, Near Eastern inscription, or if you want to call it the so-called pre-rabbinic text records or records a migration of Edomites into Italy or a genealogical transformation into the Roman people. But I can say that it is recorded about the ancient Hebrews, the Israelites. As I pointed out, start with looking up Amelia Bassano, also referred to as Shakespeare's Dark Lady. All right. So the later or latter identification of Edom with Rome appears in post-temple so-called other rabbinical or rabbinic literature as a symbolic or typological application, recasting Rome as the archetype or archetypal enemy in prophetic language, not as a literal ethnic or biological replacement. So again, you start seeing it being used as the label, a term, or a descriptor, or like what matter of fact, what many would say today, how they use Esau for everything inside this awakening, or like the phrase "white man" today being applied to anyone that's Caucasian. But it's from this so-called other rabbinical literature that began to use the word Edom, calling the Romans Edomites, similar to what we see today. But again, there's no historical record of that prior to 70 AD. All right. All right, let's go ahead and continue here. So consequently, the idea that Edom replaced or became the Romans reflects a latter or later interpretive tradition rather than an early historical record. Now, let's go to the Jewish Encyclopedia, back to here, volume 5, right? Look at what it says here. I want to highlight this key point right here, right? This is dealing with when the Romans began to war against Israel at Jerusalem, the southern kingdom, Judah, which consisted of Judah, the tribe, the Benjamites, and also the Levites. But this is another key group that fought in defense of and against the Roman government trying to protect the temple. And this is highlighted in Josephus as well. I didn't get a chance to put that in here. But with Antipater, began with Idumea dynasty that ruled over Judea, still its conquest by the Romans. Immediately before the siege of Jerusalem, 20,000 Idumeans under the leadership of John, Simeon, Phineas, and Jacob appeared before Jerusalem to fight in behalf of the zealots who were besieged in the temple. And again, this is recorded in Josephus' works, the works of Josephus, right? From this time, the Idumeans ceased to be a separate people, though the name Idumea still existed the time of Jerome. All right, so just want to make sure you guys understand, yeah, Idumea, that is Esau. That is the descendants of Esau. And they are fighting against the Romans. not fighting with the Romans. They're not referred to as being Romans when you when you read this entry by Josephus. So that this actually shows that the historical Edomites, in other words, Idumeans, still existed in the 1st century. Historically, there is no primary Roman source that identifies Romans as Edomites. So the Edom connection to Rome identification emerged in the latter or later so-called rabbinic literature, especially after the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD or 70 CE, where they use Edom as a symbolic code for Rome. All right, so they were located in southern Judea, right? When you understand where Idumea is located, it's south of Judea, and the map still shows this. I mean, you could go to the maps and see this. All right. Now, Idumea is a Greek pronunciation, just like Idumea, which was the term for Judah. Those are Greek labels, right? The Greeks labeled the whole area. Idumea or Udeos, that's Greek pronunciations. Yahwadah is the ancient pronunciation of the ancient Hebrew Israelites as far as Judah. And some of you guys may say Yehudi or Yahuda, right? That's still referring to who? But Idumea or Idumea, right? The Idumea, Edomites, Idumea, that's getting into the Judah's portion of the territory that the Greeks, the Greeks word for it. And then of course, this, we could get into some of the other stuff. All right, but I'm not doing that right now. So they were located in southern Judea, they were not absorbed into Rome as an ethnic group. They fought against Rome. That fact alone weakens any literal genealogical equation of Edom with Rome. So the next question we have to ask is what? Are the Edomites the progenitors of the Khazars? Let me say that again. Are the Edomites the progenitors of the Khazars? Are they the progenitors of the Khazars? All right. Let's go to the source here, because this source, I had this source for ages, right? And I'm one of those, when I see references, I go to the actual source. This gives some great information, but it gives some bad information too. Charles A. Weissman, Who is Esau? Edom, page 11. Right? And this is what I'm going to highlight briefly. I'm not going to go through all of this because I actually, years ago, I made notes of this book, read this book probably about 12, 13 years ago. The best historical evidence, therefore, shows that the Jews are not descended directly from the Israelites of the Bible, but derive much of their ancestry from the Khazars and other people of Turkish Asiatic blood. The Khazars are also of Edomite stock, and both stocks make up the present-day Jews. As historian H.G. Wells states, the Idumeans, in other words, the Edomites, were made Jews, and a Turkish people, Khazars, were mainly Jews in South Russia. The main part of Jewry never was in Judea and had never come out of Judea. According to the Jewish Encyclopedia, the original stock of the Khazars came from the land of Edom. So real quick, let's give some clarity here, because no, the Edomites are not the progenitors of the Khazars. No, they did not get absorbed into the Khazars. Right? This person based that logic, and when you study this guy, the Wells guy, right? They based it off that premise, right? Of, again, number one, seer, right? Remember, like I said, it's used as symbols oftentimes, right? But also a lot of what stemmed out of the Jewish encyclopedia. We're making a connection to Rome, making a connection to, and here is misusing the quote that I just made reference to from the Jewish encyclopedia. So the 1905 Jewish Encyclopedia entry on the Khazars does not directly state the Khazars descended from Edom. So what Mount Seir actually refers to biblically is the territory south of the Dead Sea. So how is it that now we're thinking that the Edomites were occupying territory in the Russian area? When we understand Mount Seir, right, biblically refers to the territory south of the Dead Sea, which is archaeologically tied to Iron Age Edom and located in modern southern Jordan. That's where this territory is located at, in modern southern Jordan. There is no independent historical documentation showing that the Turkic Khazars originated from the Edomite population of Mount Seir. Is there a connection between the Edomites and the Khazars? Guess what? There's none. Is there a connection between the Edomites and the Ashkenazis? Guess what? There's none. There's no connection. And I'm going to say this to Jordan Thomas, right? Right? Jordan Thomas, go back and listen to the lesson. I just covered this. Esau did not mix with every nation. There's not a single biblical passage that even remotely says that. Okay? Go back and listen. I'm not going to go back over it. Jeremiah 49:10 completely eliminates that thought. Jeremiah has nothing to do, spoil has nothing to do, Shaddad has nothing to do with mixing and meshing with other nations. All right? All right, so let's go ahead and keep it going. All right, let's keep it going. All right, guys, I'm not going to allow you guys to call yourself teaching the lesson in the chat. All right, so I'm going to put you in timeout, but we're going to keep it going. But please do not call yourself teaching in the chat. And I'm giving you sources, and then you trying to reteach what I'm teaching with completely poor information. Moderators do not allow reteaching the lesson in the chats. I understand people asking questions, but you have people actually trying to reteach the lesson in the chat, trying to contradict what I'm teaching. That's not going to happen. All right, come on, family. Let's be respectful. Okay, so let me see here. I saw a question here. Esau shares the same DNA marker as us. And the true Arabs, you're hitting it right on the nail. That's the part that many are missing. When Esau and Jacob, when it says that there's two nations inside the womb, this is dealing with their spirits. This is dealing with their temperament. It has nothing to do with two different people. Like you'll see, the image will be among these awakening, a dark melanated baby in a Caucasian non-pigment with no pigmentation baby. That's not what it means. It had nothing to do with skin complexion. It had everything to do with their temperaments, right? Their manner, their order. Because guess what? Jacob would have been E1, right? That means that all of, not Jacob, but Isaac would have been E. That means that all his descendants would have been E. So Esau genetic makeup would have been E, just like Jacob's genetic makeup would be E. And you hit it right on the nail. Hopefully, some of our people watching this will grab hold of this, but unfortunately, there's layers to this, and many would just run with it. All right? I'm going to say this again. I'm not going to reteach what I've already taught. You're going to have to go back into the lesson. But again, look up the word Shaddad, Shadad, right? What does it mean to spoil your seed? It means to destroy. It means to, in a nutshell, afflict. That's what it means. It has nothing to do with Esau mixing and meshing with other nations. Go back and read the text. I gave you the scripture, read it, and then just go online and just type in. Just matter of fact, a simple thing, I guess, just type in Shaddad, Shadad, Hebrew Strong's definition, and it'll give it to you. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and really continue to build here, family. I'm looking at the time here because I'm not going to be here at 12 midnight. All right. Okay. So let's go to the Eastern Bible definition of Magog, because now we're going to go ahead and make some sense of this. Let's make some sense of this. And I touched on this last night. Let's start with the Eastern Bible Dictionary of Magog. We gotta bring some of this stuff home, okay, to really see what's the commonality of the connector, right, between the Khazarians, the Ashkenazis, all the way to Netanyahu when we start seeing the Polish. All right. And that's right, family. This is going to come with the territory when you're teaching the truth. You're going to see all kinds of trolls. All right. So it says here, Magog, region of Gog, the second son of Japheth. In Ezekiel, it is the name of a nation, probably some Scythian or Tartar tribe descended from Japheth. So we see here Scythian. We see Scythian. So make a note of the word Scythian. All right. And I'm going to say this again. Esau is not Khazarian. He's not a Khazar. I'll say that one more time, and I'm not going to repeat it again. I'll leave it at that. So let's go to another source. But it goes on to say, all right, where it says here, let me go back here. It says the Latin father Jerome says that this word denotes Scythian nations, fierce and innumerable, who live beyond the Caucasus and the lake Maeotis and near the Caspian Sea and spread out onward to India. All right. So Magog is the second son of Japheth. That's why it's so important, family, to study these tables of nations. That's why we have so much confusion that's going on right now. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Somebody said they meant Netanyahu. Yeah, Netanyahu is connected to there, right? By way of Poland. All that whole territory was Russian territory, right? And when you study, and we're going to cover some of that here. So Magog is the second son of Japheth, right? And this is Genesis chapter 10, verse 1 and 2. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, Japheth, and unto them were sons after the flood, the son Japheth, or Japheth, Gomer, Gamar, Magog, Magawag, and Madai, Madaya, and Javan. Jawan, right? It's actually a Yawan, rather. There's no V's or Va sounds in ancient Hebrew. That is something that was added. And Tubal, Thabal, and Meshach, Mashach, and Tyrus, Thayaras. All right. So, but the key here, you see Magog right here. This is Magog. Okay. And that's under Japheth. So according to this Easton's Bible Dictionary, 1894, Magog is also connected to the Scythians. So make a note of the Scythians. Make a note to the Scythians. Okay, just make a note about the Scythians. So who are the Scythians? Let's look them up. The Scythians is also known as Scyth, Saka, Sake, member of a nomadic people originally of Iranian stock, known from as early as the 9th century BCE, who migrated westward from Central Asia to southern Russia and Ukraine. In the 8th and 7th century BCE, the Scythians founded a rich, powerful empire centered on what is now Crimea. Okay, so who are the Scythians? Okay, let's continue. So we see a connection with the Scythians with, as we saw with Magog, but let's take it a step further, right? This source right here tells us about the Ashkenazis It makes the connection between the Ashkenazis, the Greeks, the Romans, right? It's going to make a connection here genetically, right? This is an article titled Localizing Ashkenazic Jews to Primeval villages in the ancient Iranian lands of Ashkenaz. Now look at what it says here. All right, let me go back here. An analysis of 393 Ashkenazic, Iranian, and Mountain Jews and over 600 non-Jewish genomes demonstrated that Greeks, Romans, Iranians, and Turks exhibit the highest genetic similarity with Ashkenazi Jews. Now we're dealing with genetics. We're dealing with genetics, right? So now let's go ahead and continue. Let's go ahead and continue. All right. What it says, it goes on to say to primeval villages with names that may be derived from Ashkenaz. But I want to get to a key point here. This is the key point. The Jews called Ashkenazic, an example, Scythians. So we see that Scythians, as this source is saying genetically, when it says our results suggest that Ashkenazi Jews originated from a Slavo-Iranian confederation, which the Jews called Ashkenazic, an example, Scythian. So you see that word Scythian again. Okay. Now I want to say this, family. I don't want to get into all the different haplogroups because when you get into the J marker, they created that. When I say they, when you start getting into the DNA groups and all that, that marker was created almost 12 years after E. They used J to start pushing E away from Northeast Africa. Because the original marker, and I'll see if I can pull it up here if I have time. I think I have it. I think I still have the PDF. And I'll share with you that the original marker was E. Those Negroid corpse or bodies that was discovered, bones that was discovered in the caves, right? You heard it in the source, the caves of Galilee, the caves of Nazareth out in that area, right? They were Negroid. And when you take it a step further, I have the source that makes it clear that they were E1 to be exact. So don't get caught up in the J haplogroups because that's something that was created over 10 years, 10 to 12 years later to further push the E1, B1, or the E DNA out of what is called now the Middle East. And if you look up the maps, you'll see more and more they're not associating E with what they call the Middle East, which is actually Northeast Africa now. So let me play this source right here. Let me play this again, just so that way for those that didn't catch it, I'll play it one more time about the Negroid bones that was found in Galilee, Israel. Let's see here.
Their bones were discovered in Kafse caves near Nazareth in Galilee in 1933. 13 fragile skeletons, one a woman, a tiny baby at her feet. When these bones were first uncovered, they were the oldest complete modern human skeletons ever found.
The numerous skeletons that have been found in caves in Israel at the...
All right, so you heard that numerous bones that have been found in Israel, right? This is dealing with Negroes. This is not dealing with Caucasians, these bones that was discovered. I got other sources that completely slam dunks the whole assumption that they had bones that was there in that area. When I say they, the 1948ers, I'm just not going to present it all here tonight for the sake of time. But let me see here. Let me see something. I thought I saved it because I could tell you guys what, the actual movie. Let me see here. I could tell you the actual movie of that I got the clips from. before we continue. I'm looking at the time. All right, we're making good time. I'm going to continue here in a second. All right, I thought it was here. I can't find it. If I can, I think it's I'll get it for you. I'm not gonna guess. If I could get it, because I even downloaded the entire transcript. Right, I just got to find the transcript, and I could drop some quotes from the actual movie there. All right, so family, let's continue here. Okay, let's continue here. All right. So we see here this source is connecting the Ashkenazis to the Scythians. Okay. All right, that's right. You guys see the Sith Lord, right? All right, think about the weapon, right? Sith, and it stems from what? The Scythians. Anyway, the so-called death angel. All right, but anyway, so who are the Scythians? Who are the Scythians? Who are the Scythians? And if you're having any issues with the audio, just hit a refresh on your browser. All right, now let me make sure you guys are good. You guys hear my audio pretty clear? If you hear me pretty clear, type 1. All right. If you guys hear me pretty clear, type 1. Okay, just making sure. And guess what, family? Every now and then, let's go ahead and post in the chat, take the DNA, right? Take the DNA. Guess what? I took the DNA, and guess what? My DNA points me to Israel. I took multiple DNA tests. One point me to primarily the Limba and some other groups, right? And also the Igbos is connected there. My bloodline is E1B1A, right? Anyway, who are the Scythians? Who are the Scythians? So let's go to the Anchor Bible Dictionary, Volume 1. Let's see what it says about Ashkenaz and watch how it connects to the Scythians, right? Ashkenaz, first descendant of Gomer, who is the first offspring of Japheth, right, in the Table of Nations. In Jeremiah 51:27, Ashkenaz appears along with Ararat and many as a kingdom called upon to oppose Babylon. All right, but let's go ahead and continue here. It goes on to say, who appeared between the Black and Caspian Seas in the 8th and 7th centuries, right, driving out the Cimmerians, right, and threatening the Assyrians. And we see here Herodias or Herodotus. These people came to be called the Scythians. So we see this historian even makes a note about these Scythians, right? And these are some of the terms that name went under. Ashkenazi, Ushkuzu, and Scythians is obvious, but nevertheless, I don't want to read all of that. Don't want to get too caught up in that. But it says present archaeological evidence for a distinctive Scythian culture begins in the 7th century BC. All right. But then it goes on to say, let me see, do I want to read all of this? Possible portrayals, of Scythians appearing on 9th century reliefs of Ashurnasirpal II, but the first Neo-Assyrian mention of the Ishkuza occurs during the time of Sargon II in the 8th century BC, driving back the Cimmerians. The Scythians were able to push south to dominate Asia. Then it goes on to say Scythian raid against Egypt was stopped by Psammetichus I, right? And Herodotus or Herodias, he makes notes of this. All right. So it goes on to say for the later history, the Scythians and the questions of their identification with the enemy from the north mentioned in the first part of Jeremiah. Okay. According to the Anchor Bible Dictionary, the Scythians are the descendants of Ashkenaz. And you'll see again, that's the common theme that we'll see about the Scythians connected to multiple descendants of Japheth. but you won't see anything referring to the Khazarians. So the Anchor Bible Dictionary, Volume 5, definition of the Scythians. Let's see what it says here. It says here, biblical scholars sometimes associate the Scythians with Ashkenaz and with the bringers of destruction in the prophecies of Jeremiah, Zephaniah. Outside the Hebrew Bible, their reputation for savagery is alluded to in 2 Maccabee 4:7. So it gives some references here, right? So they are known for savagery. They're known for savagery. They're brutal. Are we not kind of seeing some of this behavior, these attributes with the 1948ers of today? Are we not seeing that right now? Right? So let's see, the Scythians called Ashguze by the Assyrians. So again, the other sources outside the scriptures, you see the association of the Scythians. Okay? So Scythians ruled over all of the Near East for 28 years after entering the area from the north. Traditionally, this period of rule is assigned to the 7th or 6th century BC. The Scythians continue to be mentioned in texts of the Babylonians, Persians, Greeks as allies and as enemies through the 4th century BC. All right. So let's go to continue here. So the Scythians occupied what's called modern day Russia and Ukraine. So there is another group of Russians who are connected to the Russians and Ukrainians, right? That's connected to these groups of people that I'm making reference to. They are called the Khazars, right? So the Jewish community, as we know them, falls under two main groups. Sephardic Jew, which is, these are constructs that was created in the 8th and 9th century. Remember, we taught about this. And the Ashkenazi Jews, right? The Ashkenazis, the 1948ers, they're the ones that created the group Sephardic. I already taught on this, right? And I may do another teaching on this. I may even just do a video documentary on it. So the Ashkenazis, they are the East European Jews, right? Which were found in Poland, Russia, Germany, and Western Asia, okay? So the Jewish Encyclopedia in 1905 revealed the main stock of the Jews who came from this people known as Khazars, right? Let's go here. This is the Jewish Encyclopedia, volume 4, page 1. Look at what it says. A people of Turkish origin whose life and history are interwoven with the beginning of the history of the Jews of Russia. You don't see a reference saying that their history is interwoven with the Edomites. You don't see anything that makes reference of this. It goes on to say shores of the Black Sea and Caspian Sea since the first centuries of the Common Era. Historical evidence points to the region of the Ural as the home of the Khazars. Among the classical writers of the Middle Ages, they were known as Khazars, Khazirs, Akadzirs, Akatirs, and in the Russian chronicles. So again, we see with their own sources saying that the bulk of their stock come from who? The Khazarians. So this is another key source that I use, tracing lost history from the Caucasus to Europe, right? From Dr. Kolja, right? And Spory, and he's tracking his lineage. And look at what he says. And notice he's not going to mention anything about Edomites. To the origin of Europeans and Jews, according to some scientists, large parts of the so-called European or Caucasian civilizations, including the Indo-European languages, originally come from the area between the Caucasus and the Volga, in other words, the Caspian and Pontic steppe. Ashkenazi Jewry deriving from the ancient Khazars can also be tracked back to that same area. I embarked on an overlapped trip from the Caspian Sea and the Caucasus the Caucasus to Central Europe, following in the footsteps of our ancestors to learn more about our history on a road trip from east to west. So the migration of these people is described as the characteristic of a serpent. That's what this writer does. And I'm going to show you here. This is the map, right? And how he started mapping out, and he really, it's an invasion, not a migration. It's an invasion, right? And it looks like a pattern of a snake, as he's going to express here, right? So, Welcome, excuse me if I butcher it. German is not my thing, but is usually described as a nation's migration period of Germanic people from east to west, pushed forward by climatic change and or enemies from Asia's steppe, like the Huns. But let's go ahead and continue here. Seen as invasions of joint Turco-Gothic forces, in a more delicate interpretation, the invading steppe forces were manipulating with an invisible hand. So these are invasions, as this doctor is describing. And he's making sure that we understand, that those that read his information understand that he comes from where? he's showing the connection between the Khazarians, right? The European 1948ers, the Jewish community. He's making that connection here. But you won't see anything about Esau. You won't see anything about Edomites. You don't see anything about the Northeast Africa. All right, so let's continue here. To me, seem etymologically close, relative, just as much as the separation lines between, I'm not going to read all of this. All right. So I want to say this to you, family. There is something special about you, Judah. There's something special about you, Israel. Okay. So there's a reason why these name stealers, these 1948ers, continue to make assertive efforts to belittle the importance of our skin complexion and its texture. Right? Let me prove this here, right? Because they want to tell you that skin doctrine doesn't matter, but let me show you what they were doing to our skin, what these group of people are known to doing with human skin. These people groups are also known for their savagery. Let me prove it here, right? Research tests 2,400-year-old leather and realize it's made of human skin, December 20th, 2023, right? Look at what it says here. Researchers test 2,400-year-old leather and realize it's made of human skin. A group of horse riding warriors kept gruesome battle trophies. Who are these warriors? Who are these warriors that is described as being savages? Who are they? Well, look at what it says. Scythians in modern day Ukraine made leather out of human skin. And then it goes on to say the discovery affirms a claim by the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, or Herodias, or Herodotus. Excuse me, I'm butchering the names tonight. I'm all tongue-tied tonight. My apologies, family. Who wrote extensively on the Scythian way of life, right? And it goes on to say sources of leather found on 14 different Scythian sites in southern Ukraine. The manifold sources: sheep, goat, cattle, horse, and yes, human hair. Okay, come on, family. Let me give you some other sources. Why is this historical barbaric fact important to know? Why is it important to know? Look at this, family. This is a source: leather from human skin. Show me what group of people had to go through what our ancestors had to go through. The true consequences of Deuteronomy 28, not a fabricated lie that Netanyahu had to call itself conjuring up. That's right, conjuring, using charms, using witchcraft. Look at here. I remember that 2 or 3 years ago, I incidentally referred to a prominent physician of the city wearing shoes made from the skin of Negroes. Come on, family. He is still adhered to that custom, insisting that the tan hide of an African makes the most enduring and the most pliable leather known to man. Only last week, I met him upon the street with a brand new pair of shoes. All right, I'm not going to read all of this. All right, but he says here, and this is what he says about this. He says, and let me see the question here. It says, I looked at his footwear as I always do. His pedal coverings have an irresistible fascination for me, and said with a smile, is the downtrodden African still beneath your feet? In the most matter of fact way, and without the shadow of a smile, he answered, I suppose you meant to inquire if I still wear shoes made from the skin of a Negro. I certainly do. And I don't propose changing in that respect until I find a leather. In other words, he's saying a durable leather. Come on, family. We can't make this stuff up. So why is this historical barbaric fact important to know? Right? And this gives more information of another situation describing the same thing. I'm not going to read all of this for the sake of time, but look at, oh yeah, let me just read this one point. He told her that he had purchased them from a Turk in Alexandria. Come on, family. And that he did not know what sort of leather they were made of, but he supposed it was the skin of some wild animal. As a matter of fact, the skin Carn came from a Negro cadaver, which was once prone on a Jefferson College dissecting table. And the leather was prepared in Wamseldorf. The rosettes on the slippers were deftly fashioned from the Negro's kinky hair. Oh, come on, family. They made leather out of us to make boots, to make belts, to make pocketbooks. They used our hair for pillow cushions. I got the videos on that. George Washington was using body parts, starting with his teeth. It's documented. He was using the teeth of his slaves. Okay, anyway. So who are these people and why is it important to know, family? It's very important to know. So Herodotus gave some additional key information about the Scythians. He gave some additional key information about it, right? He says here, it was that the wandering Scythians once dwelt in Asia and there warred with the Mazzageti, but with ill success. They therefore quitted their homes from Araxes and entered the land of Chimeria. For that land, which is now inhabited by the Scyths, was formerly the country of the Cimmerians. On their coming, the natives who heard how numerous the invading armies was, held a council. All right. So look at this, family. Who are the Cimmerians? Who are the Cimmerians? They are connected to, look at what you see here, Gomer, the eldest son of Japheth, the grandson of Noah, the progenitor of the early Cimmerians. So they are connected to who? Japheth and other branches of the what? Celtic family. Come on, family. Type in, take the test. Just type in, take the test. So anyone's trolling, drown them out with the take the test. So the connection between the Khazars and the Edomites is built primarily through layered interpretation rather than direct historical evidence. Let me say that again. The connection between the Khazars and the Edomites is built primarily through layered interpretation rather than direct historical evidence. So the best historical evidence, therefore, shows that the bloodline Israelites are not descendants directly from the Israelites. Let me say that again. The best historical evidence, therefore, shows that the bloodline Israelites are not descendants directly from the. Oh man, this is. I didn't type this in right. This is off. So the best historical. I'm not even going to butcher that here. All right. So the Khazars were a Turkic steppe confederation that emerged north of the Caucasus in the 7th through the 10th century CE, and whose ruling class adopted Judaism. The so-called Jewish and Byzantine sources often associate them with Scythians or broader steppe populations, linking them to Ashkenaz or Japhethite lineages in Genesis. All right. So again, the Khazars being connected to who? You know, they were the Turkic people, right? Connected to Judaism. But that's a whole nother discussion that in itself. But I'm not going to do it tonight. Okay. We do know they converted. But again, that's a whole nother discussion. But we're going to continue to build here. So the Edomites, by contrast, were a Semitic people descending from Esau, whose homeland was Mount Seir, south of the Dead Sea in the Iron Age. So the attempted connection arises when latter writers combine three separate strands. Here's the three separate strands. Medieval traditions mentioning Seir, the so-called rabbinic symbolic use of Edom as a name for Rome after the 7th century. More specifically, as I share, we get into the 3rd century. The 3rd and 4th century is when you see it notated. Some argue that Edom survived through Khazaria and later European Jewry. However, there is no continuous primary historical record demonstrating a documented migration or genealogical line from Mount Seir to the Khazar steppe, making the Edomite linkage interpretive rather than direct evidence. So let me also provide this here. Let me give you this source here. All right. Looking at the time here, we got a few more. We got about 20 more minutes. Jerusalem Post wants to fully understand your family genealogy, not without a court order. March 30th, 2019. Just to make sure we all on the same page. According to some ancestry websites, there are indicators to tell you if you possess Jewish DNA or not. Right? Remember, we got plenty of videos on this channel that deals with this. One thing for certain, an ancestry kit from the local pharmacy is out of the question, according to Yediot Arahanat report. While millions of such kits have been sold in the United States, Israelis are forbidden to buy ancestry DNA kits from the stores without presenting a court order. And this is coming from the Jerusalem Post, for those that may want to troll and say that it didn't. All right. Okay. Let's continue here. I want to read all of this. So who are the Jutes? Who are the Jutes? I know we covered this last night, but again, we're going back over. To make sure I get as much as I can in for you guys. Who are the Jutes? Here's the etymology dictionary definition of Jute. One of the ancient Germanic inhabitants. So you don't hear about the Jutes. Have you guys heard about the Jutes when you was in school? I never heard about the Jutes. I heard about the Anglos and the Saxons, but I didn't hear about the Jutes. I was studying the English language, really studying, and I'll let it out, as I progress here. And I was like, wait a minute, Jutes. And that's when I started. Well, anyway, let me just pull this out. Let me go through this here, because I want to get as much sources as we can, because we got 20 minutes to go. All right, and I don't want to we got till no later than 11. All right. One of the ancient Germanic inhabitants between modern Germany and Denmark, right? That is important. The name is related to Old Norse Iatar, but it goes on to say related to Jutish. What does that sound like, family? Jute and Jutish. What does that sound like? What does that sound like? Is there a coincidence that Jute or Jutes and Jutish sounds like Jew and Jewish. Let's go back here. You see the word Jute, right? And here you see Jutish. Let me zoom it in so that way no one could say that I'm making this up. Jute, related Jutish. Does that sound familiar? Is it a coincidence that Jutes and Jutish sounds like Jew and Jewish? Who are the Jutes? Who are the Jutes? Who are the Jutes? All right. Antiquity of Jot race. This fact is far further proved by the unparalleled bravery because Jutes were the first conquerors of Britain. Even when later on Saxons invaded the shore of Southampton Water, they could not succeed without reinforcement by a body of Jutes who formed settlements of their own in the Isle of Wight, on the mainland. The historical material of those times is so meager that some historians confuse Saxons with Jutes as belonging to the same race. Although not only the race was different, but even the territory where they lived was quite separate. The Jutes were Scythian Jots. There you have it. Look at that. The Jutes were Scythian Jots, right? Jutes, Jutish, Scythian Jots, while Anglos and Saxons belong to Teutonic race. All right, so the Jutes are Scythian Jots. I want to reiterate that. So are the Jutes really Scythians? Well, let's look at here. Let's see what else it says here, right? H.G. Wells, the outline history in chapter 32 section says that there were very small racial and social differences between Anglos, Saxon, Jutes, Dane, or Norman. As mentioned as number 4 above, he has confused Anglos and Saxons who belong to Teutonic race with Jutes, Danes, and Normans who belonged to the Scythian race. The fact that they were allies in their raids upon Britain is not enough for their racial confusion. Look at what it says here, family, because the Normans, you're going to find out who the Normans are. Look, it says Normans who belong to the Scythian race. So now it says Vikings were called Northmen because they lived in the north while the Angles and Saxons lived in the south. Northmen ultimately were abbreviated into Normans. So are we really saying, or is this source really saying that the Scythian Jots, they are connected to the Vikings? Is that what the source is saying? Well, yes. Look at this. In 912, an expedition of these Normans under Rolf the Grenger established itself upon the coast of France and in the region that was known henceforth as Normandy or Northmandy. There was a fresh conquest of England by the Danes and the Norm Dukes of Normandy became king of England. This will be mentioned in details in another chapter. Here I am concerned only with the fact that Danes, Vikings, and Normans were all Jutes. They were all different names under the same race of Scythian Jots. So we see the connection, right? Remember I said the Scythians, man, you really start doing a deeper discovery under the about the Scythians, everything starts to come together. You don't see anything about Edomites. So look at here. Look at here. Look at here. You see Yuchi. This is a word by which Chinese knew the Jots, okay? So the Chinese called them Yuchi. Doesn't that sound familiar? You still ties in, right? Yuchi. These Yuchi conquered the slightly Hellenized kingdoms of Bactria and mixed with Aryan people there. Later on, these Yuchi became or were merged with Aryan elements into a people called the Indo-Scythians. Okay? All right. So going on here, it says, wiping out the last vestiges of Hellenic rule in India. Okay? So who is the son of perdition? So we covered a lot. I'm gonna see if I can close out with a rally here. We got really with a bang here. I want to start with the son of perdition because then I'm gonna see if I could get some of the DNA stuff in here. So who is the son of perdition? We're gonna give clarity here real quick. Is he the same as the Antichrist? I'm here to tell you no. And I encourage you to watch the lesson I did on that, but I'm not going to go into the details. But I really want to get to a key point here. Daniel chapter 7, verse 23. I'm not going to really get into the son of perdition, but I really want to highlight a key beast here. I want to highlight the fourth beast, right? This is dealing with the fourth beast. Right, we'll deal with the son of perdition. I'll do a special teaching this upcoming week, so that way you guys get understanding of what the son of perdition is. All right, that's coming from 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. All right, verse 3 and 4. But nevertheless, I don't want to really deal with the son of perdition. I really want to focus on this beast right here, right? This third beast, right? I really want to deal with this here. All right, or should I say fourth beast? And the 10 horns out of this kingdom, are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them. He shall be diverse, Shana or Shana'a, from the first, and he shall subdue the 3 kings. So this is dealing with the fourth beast, right? When you study Daniel chapter 7, deals with 4 beasts, but this fourth beast is the beast that you really have to pay attention to, because it's so much, but at the same time, it's very simple, because it says this fourth beast, the attribute is being diverse. But when we go to the Hebrew, right, and understanding what diverse means change. It means alter. It means manipulation. So this fourth beast is going to have the attributes of what? Being able to change, alter, and manipulation. Does that make sense, everyone? So when we understand the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, Catholicism, which Christianity stems from Catholicism, Islam, right? When you start tying all of these together, what do they have in common? Manipulation, altering, and changing history. Whose history got changed the most by all these so-called Abrahamic faiths? Whose history got hijacked? Whose heritage that has gotten hijacked? Whose identity got hijacked? Okay, so make a note. Shana'a, this fourth beast, has the gift of altering, changing things, manipulation. So when we look at this word diverse, right, the key thing that I really want to point out, where it says the sense of including and promoting persons of previous underrepresented minority identities, right? So who is this beast? Who is this beast, family? Who is this beast that will operate under the spirit of altering, changing, and manipulating information? Who is this beast that will operate under the spirit of altering, changing, and including and promoting persons of previous underrepresented minority identities? Who is this beast that have managed to convince the entire world that they always stayed within the 6 million number, that they want to continue to push 6 million, even in this so-called the greater Israel project or whatever, this expansion project, right? Even though you had what is called the Holocaust, but yet still maintained to be 6 million. How is that possible? How is that possible? Let me allow a rabbi who's been really advocating, stating that, when we start understanding the Israelites, he makes it clear. I got to put some additional clips of him in here, that he makes it clear that, yes, there's over 100 million of us around the world that are connected to the Israelites, the ancient Israelites. But he'll say Israel identity. Let's hear it real quick.
Tell us more about your work and the coursework that you're doing, because you are a real advocate for this topic and why it's so important in the times we're living in.
I appreciate it. I think the most important thing is like the if so, so what? So we've established that there are these individuals over here, but the next question is, what do we do about it? Is everyone's supposed to convert and come back to Israel? But if we think that way, there's really 100 million people around the world that have this Israelite identity. There's really 100 million people around the world that have this Israelite identity.
There's really 100 million people around the world that have this Israelite identity.
Is there a reason that the Jewish people that represent, and I want to get back to this because you didn't let me finish a while ago, they represent 0.2% of the world's population. In the entirety of the world, there are about 16 million Jews total. In the entirety of the world, there are about 16 million Jews total.
There's really 100 million people around the world that have this Israelite identity.
16 million.
100 million.
16 million.
There's really 100 million people around the world that have this Israelite identity coming from the tribes. And Israel's, smaller than the size of New Jersey. Is it sustainable to think in the way of having to convert and bring back? And if you look at the Lemba, they don't even want to convert. They say, why are we converting to something we're already part of?
Now, family, they want us to believe, they really use charms, spell casting, to have the church, to have the world believe that the prophecy, right, about Abraham, right, it said that his seeds are going to be what? Innumerable, like the sands of the sea, right? Like the stars, right, in the heaven. Said that he is going to have what? So many descendants that you can't even count. But yet, according to them, it's been stuck at 6 million. Remember, I taught on this. 6 million is a mystical number. So no matter what they do, it could be one person or it could be what? 10 million people. They still going to keep it at 6 million. So guess what, family? You have the Igbos, you have the Lemba, you have other tribes in Africa that are and proven to be bloodline Israelites. Guess what? Cohen Hamadishi made it clear in an interview, a discussion I and others had, my cousin Benaiah, Sister E, we had with him, and he made it clear that there was hundreds of thousands of Lemba that was on those slave ships. And we could get into the Igbo, we could get into the Yoruba, we could get into the some of the other groups like the Mavumbas, identified as being Israelites. But anyone can say that they're Israel with no proof but the Negroes. We got to show proof. And when we show proof, guess what they would tell you? Oh, DNA doesn't matter. Have you heard that before? Oh, you can't trust the DNA. Once we began to start taking the DNA tests and start coming back that we are connected to all the people that have been identified as being Israelites, like one of my DNA results, it brings out the Ethiopian Israelites, the Moroccan, it brings out all of those guys. Come on, family. Come on, family. Let's continue. All right, we're getting close. All right. Who is this beast, though, family? Daniel chapter 7, verse 24. Who is this beast? It says that this beast is going to be, it says, he shall be diverse, right? Shana'ah, first, from the first, and he shall subdue the three kings. That's another key prophecy. Who is this beast? These systems of men, starting with religion. Who is this beast? And who are the three kings? Well, if you want to understand what subdue is, this is what subdue means. It says to depress, sink, humiliate, bring down, cast down, put down, be lower, bring lower, lay lower, make lower, put lower. So who is this beast that's going to who's going to cast down, who's going to humiliate, who's going to bring down these three kings? But the key is, who are the three kings? Come on, family. Who is this diverse beast who shall subdue the three kings? Who are the three kings? Let me give you the scripture reference. 2 Kings chapter 3, verse 7 through 10 tells you who the three kings are. Guess what it says here? And he went and sent to Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah. So Judah, that's the southern kingdom. The king of Moab hath rebelled against me. Wilt thou go with me against Moab to battle? And he said, I will go up. I am as thou art, my people as thy people, and my horses as thy horses. Look at this here, family. And he said, which way shall we go? But here's the kicker. I want to get to a key point. Look here. So the king of Israel, which is the northern kingdom, and the king went, and the king of Judah, which is the southern kingdom, and the king of Edom, which is the Edomites. Wait a minute. You telling me that prophecy is dealing with the king of Israel, which is the northern kingdom, the king of Judah, which is the southern kingdom, and the king of Edom, which is the Edomites? That these systems of men, this fourth beast is going to subdue, going to cast down? Come on, family. Even the prophecy itself knocks a lot of this stuff down. This misinformation that we have. And the king of Israel said, alas, Yahweh hath called these three kings together. So the three kings are the king of Israel, the king of Judah, and the king of Edom. So when we go back to Daniel chapter 7, verse 25, it says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, great words, Malayah. Many would say Malai or Malah, right? Against the Most High, and shall wear out Bala'ah. In the Israeli, Bala, the saints, really the saints is Quadayash, which means holy. This is referring to Israel, the true Israelites of the Most High, to think to change and to think to change times, laws, and they shall be given into his hands until time and times and dividing of times. So what are some of the manipulations of this beast? The unbiblical deception of the Noahide deception, right? The unbiblical Noahide deception. I'm not going to read all of this, but when you really start understanding this, it starts with understanding one of the messiahs the Israelis embrace. It is Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. That's right. You know what? I was correct. Mendel is his middle name. I was on a call earlier, discussion with a Berean scholar, and I said Mendel Schneerson, right? His actual full name is Menachem Mendel Schneerson. So I was right. I just said his middle name, right? Forgot his first name. But anyway, how influential was this guy? He the one that charged Netanyahu to do what he's doing. You can find his name in the education bill titled Education Day, that official implementation of the so-called Noahide laws. I'm not going to read all of this, but this is coming from that source here, right? This is joint resolution, it says House J Resolution 104 to designate March 26, 1991 as Education Day. Right. And here's the kicker. This is what it points out: the 7 Noahide laws, which there's no biblical stance. There's nothing to biblically support this. All right. That's what happens when you start dealing with the Talmudic doctrine, the Mishneh stuff. They start creating their own understanding of what the text is. All right. What the text actually says. But I want to get to a key point here. Whereas the Lubavitch movement has fostered and promoted these ethnical values and principles throughout the world, where Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the leader of the Lubavitch movement, this is connected to who? The commander-in-chief or the commander-in-thief. This is connected to who? Netanyahu. This is connected to man, we could go right down the line. This is connected to to remember the tunnels that was discovered up in New York. That's connected to this guy right here. All right. So I'm not gonna read all of this here. So what is the Lubavitch movement? Right? You guys already know it, right? This is dealing with recognizing him as being the Messiah. I'm not gonna read all of this. I'm trying to get it in. I got a few more minutes here. But this is treating him, as you see here, many Lubavitchers, right? How many is a matter of dispute, continue today to view him as the Messiah, who either is not actually dead or will return from the dead. They still meet at his grave. So their Messiah is also known as the Rebbe, right? So what is the Rebbe? What is the Rebbe, right? This source right here tells you who the Rebbe is, and it gets into a lot of, basically you start seeing the mysticism on here. So the Rebbe means my master or my teacher. You can see why the Messiah said don't you refer to anyone in these terms, right? But look at what it says here. There's another meaning to the title Rebbe, one especially associated with a rabbi. They call him Baal Shem Tov. In other words, Baal Shem Tov, you start getting into understanding the charms, right? He deals with charms. It's documented. He deals with charms. He deals with witchcraft. All right. So how influential was Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson? How influential was he? Again, he anointed Netanyahu to be the last prime minister of Israel and to pass the scepter to their Messiah. So who is Netanyahu? Who is he? Who is he? But again, Daniel says he shall speak great words against the Most High. And so when we understand that phrase, great words against the Most High, we see here the Israeli Malah, because now we're dealing with the vowel system here, but ancient Hebrew, this would be Malah or Mala'ah, right? But nevertheless, a word, command, discourse. So it's saying this beast will create a lot of discourse. That's part of the characteristics. Are we not seeing, starting with these 1948ers, they're creating a lot of discourse? Have you noticed that? If you noticed that, type in, take the DNA test. If you seeing that these 1948ers are creating so much discourse, type in, take the DNA test. Somebody just type in if you're in agreement with it. While you're doing that, let me give shout outs to Elder in the building. Thank you for the love and support. Bring it out as usual, Pastor family. Let's give a shout out. Show our elders some love and support. Thank you for it, for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Come on, family. Type in, take the DNA test. See, this is what the scripture is saying when it says this beast is going to what? Let's go back to the prophecy here. It says this beast is going to speak great words against the Most High. In other words, it's going to create so much confusion. It's going to create so much discourse. And that's what this beast is good at doing. Creating discourse. Mala'ah. Look at this here. A word, command, discourse, confusion. A key word for discourse, right? Keyword discourse. Let's see what this means. Discourse, right? Look at what it says. Process of understanding, reasoning, thought, right? A running about, conversation, reasoning. Look at here. To run about, run to and fro. Doesn't that sound familiar? Hasatan going what? To and fro, seeking him whom he can devour. Guess what? That's the definition of a troll. When you look up what a troll is someone that's going what? To and fro, going about to see who they can devour. That's the true definition of a troll. Come on, family. In the scriptures, I believe it's Leviticus chapter 19, either 18 or 19, they are referred to as a talebearer. Take the DNA test. Come on. Wear out. Let's see what the definition of wear out, the meaning of wear out means, right? So we see that he's going to cause so much confusion, but look at what it says here. Bala. It says to fail, to wear out, decay, consume, use up completely. What does that mean? The reason why there's so much going on right now, the reason why it seems like, have you guys heard the term flood the zone, right? Flood the zone. That is to what? Make it so that way you're so worn out trying to what? Catch everything that comes in that you just can't catch everything to the point that it completely wears you out, make you good for nothing. We as a people, we have right now, we are so worn out with all the deception, all the delusion, all the things that have been going on every election cycle to the point after this last election cycle, our people said, we checked out. We're not showing up in the marches. We're not showing up in the protests. We are tired. Why? Because we are what? We've been what? Worn out, made to be what? Good for nothing. They used us completely up, continue to use us. Come on, family. Doesn't that sound familiar? Take the DNA test. This beast will create through manipulation, right? Will create so much discourse through media that many will become worn out, will become good for nothing, and want to what? Completely give up. Doesn't that sound familiar? Is that the actual accuracy of the text? Absolutely. Who is the son of perdition? We're going to deal with that next weekend. I'm not going to deal with it tonight. All right. But let me give you some sources. I'm gonna give an extra 10 minutes here because I want to just do a little bit of DNA test, right? Or should I say some DNA information, right? Take the DNA test. Times Israel leaked report. Israel acknowledges Jews, in fact, Khazar's secret plan for reverse migration to Ukraine, March 18, 2014. But let's go to the source. Let me just fast forward here. Right? This is what you will see when you currently go right now. If you go to this link, this is what you're going to see. They added this note here to try to say that this post was made out of sarcasm. Family, this is unheard of. They went and broke every rule of journalism. This document, right? This article was written like 13 years ago, didn't have any reference of comedy or like they would say here with this. Matter of fact, let me just read it here. Being sarcastic. Look at what it says here. Editorial notes. This blog post is a work of satire. It was published in 2014 on the eve of Purim, a Jewish holiday that is celebrated with wild merrymaking and raucous comedy with a particular emphasis on poking fun at anti-Semitism and ignorance. Now, come on now. You know that the 1948ers cannot take a joke. They're going after anyone that make jokes about them the whole nine. You can't think about who just got Jamie Foxx, I believe, had got in trouble about them. What's his name? David Chappelle. You could go right down the list of comedians making jokes about them and got labeled anti-Semitic. Take the DNA test. Come on. Eat the cake, Adam A. So this caption was added on February 28th, 2022 at 11:26 a.m. Let me prove it to you. What's the significance of February 28th, 2022? During that time, the U.S. News, right? This is an article, U.S. News, Russia invades Ukraine, a timeline of crisis, February 2nd, 2022. Right? Look at this here. This is the source. February 24th, 2022, the world watches as Russia invaded its neighboring country, Ukraine. How did the two countries once tied together by the Soviet Union, actually the Khazars, get to this point? These are the major events that led to the crisis. Okay, let's continue. Times of Israel leaked report. Let's go to the original report, right? This is the original report, right? And this is coming from, matter of fact, let me see if this is long enough. If it's too long, then you guys know what's going to happen. Let me drop the link of the original report, right? And you'll see that you won't see the caption that they added to it, right? I'm going to drop it in the chat and we're going to wrap this up. All right. That's the original article right there. You don't see anything. You don't see a caption being added here of satire. Come on, family. This is a screenshot. Now, I typed it in. I not typed it in. I pasted it inside the chat. Go to it. If you guys are able to toggle between two windows, pull it up. You're not going to see a caption there. That caption was added 4 years ago. But look at what it says, right? Let's highlight a couple of things. Look at here, March 22nd, 2014. All right. It is well known that sometime in the 8th, to the 9th centuries, the Khazars, a warlike Turkic people, converted to Judaism and ruled over a vast domain in what became southern Russia and Ukraine. What happened to them after the Russians destroyed that empire? Around the 11th century has been a mystery. Many have speculated that the Khazars became the ancestors of Ashkenazi Jews. Arabs have long cited that the Khazar hypothesis in attempts to deny a Jewish historical claim to the land of Israel. During the UN debate over Palestine partition, Chaim Weizmann responded sarcastically, "It's a very strange. It is very strange. All my life I have been a Jew, felt like a Jew, and I now learn that I am a Khazar." In a more folksy vein, Prime Minister Golda Meir famously said, "Khazar Shmazar." There is no Khazar people. I knew no Khazar in Kyiv or Milwaukee. Show me these Khazars of whom you speak. All right, so let's continue here. Right? Speaking off the record, he explained, we first thought that admitting we are really Khazars was one way to get around Abbas' insistence that no Jew can remain in a Palestinian state. Maybe we are grasping for straws, but when we refuse to accept that, it forced us to think about more creative solutions. The Ukrainian invitation for the Jews to return was a godsend. So they said that they admitted being Khazarians, but then they saying that they admitted being Khazars, but it was a joke. It was, come on, family. So Ukrainian invitation for the Jews to return was a godsend. Relocating all the settlers within Israel in a short time would be difficult for reasons of logistics and economics. We certainly don't want another Fashlan like the expulsion of the settlers in Gaza. All right, but let's continue. Speaking on deep background, a well-placed source in intelligence circles said, we're not talking about all the Ashkenazi Jews going back to Ukraine. Obviously, that is not practical. So they were creating opening up for Ukraine basically to be considered a Jewish state, and Ukraine offered Ashkenazis or kind of like a law return to Ukraine. All right. So Ukraine extended an invitation for Jews to return, particularly after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So in the early 1900s, following Ukraine's independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, the government and Jewish organizations promoted the idea of Jewish repatriation, especially in the context of the country seeking to rebuild its economy and identity. So let's examine another key section of the article titled Khazaria 2.0. Look at what it says, right? Still the same article. All Jews who wish to return would be welcomed back without condition as citizens, right? Khazaria 2.0, the more so if they take part in the promised infusion of massive Israeli military assistance, including troops, equipment, construction of new bases. If the initial transfer works, other West Bank settlers would be encouraged to relocate to Ukraine as well. All right. It goes on to say, after Ukraine, bolstered by this support, reestablished control over all its territory, the current autonomous Republic of Crimea would once again become an autonomous Jewish domain, the small-scale successor of the medieval empire of Khazaria, as the Peninsula too once was. Let me read that again. The small-scale successor, let me read it right here. After Ukraine, bolstered by this support, reestablishes control over over all its territory, the current autonomous Republic of Crimea would once again become autonomous, an autonomous Jewish domain, the small-scale successor to the medieval empire of Khazaria, would be called in Yiddish Khazare. As you know, the spokesman continued, the prime minister has said time and time again, we are proud and ancient people whose history goes back 4,000 years. The same is true, right? Let me see here. It says, well, I didn't put it all there, but nevertheless, I want to make sure you guys understand they know they are not the true people of the book. They know they are, they know who they are and they know who they are not. Right? Live science surprise. Ashkenazi Jews are genetically European. Come on, family, there's plenty of sources. Richards and his colleagues analyzed mitochondrial DNA, which is contained, and this is dealing with the women, in the cystoplasma of the egg, and passed down only from the mother from more than 3,500 people throughout the Near East, Caucasus, and Europe, including Ashkenazi Jews. The team found that the 4 founders were responsible for 40% of the Ashkenazi mitochondrial DNA, and that all these founders originated where? In Europe. The majority of the remaining people could be traced to other European lineages. So it's saying 40% of the Ashkenazi mitochondrial DNA points to what? Europe. Said that that these founders they originated in Europe. But then it goes on to say the majority of the remaining people could be traced to other European lineages. So it's still saying that, hey, you have the Ashkenazi, right? 40%. Then it says other European lineages. So it's saying that pretty much they're European. All told, more than 80% of the maternal lineages of Ashkenazi Jews could be traced to Europe, with only a few lineages originating in the Near East. Virtually none came from the North Caucasus. Now, this is where it started getting sketchy, right? And I'm going to give some additional sources to shoot this down because, this is where it gets sketchy. I'm going to show you here. Located along the border of Europe and Asia between the Black and Caspian Seas. The finding should thoroughly debunk one of the most questionable but still tenacious hypotheses that most Ashkenazi Jews can trace their roots to the mysterious Khazar kingdom that flourished during the 9th century. So I'm going to give you some sources. I'm not going to read all of this, right? But let's give some sources. Let's give some additional sources, right? That's going to knock down what I just read. All right, let me see here. Yeah, this is basically saying the same thing, that Ashkenazi Jews are descendant of European women who converted to Judaism, possibly around the time of the early Roman period, concluding a new genetic study that casts doubt on many prevailing theories about the origins of Ashkenazism. Okay, let's fast forward. Yeah, this is still saying the same, but it's saying that they're descended from European Jewish women, right? Let me fast forward. So I'm not going to get into the law of return. You guys already know that. I'm going to wrap this up, family. I'm just trying to get to a key point. All right. Let's see here. All right. Let me see here. Let me see what's this title. Yeah, this Ashkenazi roots to European women who probably converted to Judaism. So this is still backing the same information. All right. I don't want to read all of this because it's kind of like a little redundant, but I like to use 2 and 3 witnesses to kind of explain certain things here. So I don't want to read all of this, but it says here, Ashkenazi maternal lineages were not brought from the Levant. Levant, that is Northeast Africa. That is what is called the Middle East. Ashkenazi maternal lineages were not brought from the Levant, as commonly supposed, nor recruited in the Caucasus, as sometimes suggested, but assimilated within Europe. Regardless, they are not connected to the ancient Israelites, right? Whether they want to say that they are not connected to the Khazarians or whatever, but they're still saying that they're Europeans. Okay. Let me fast forward. I don't want to get into this here. Right? Numbers chapter 27, verse 8 gives clarity about the lineage for Israelites was established to be the father. You can also see Numbers chapter 2, but also Numbers chapter 27, verse 8 through 11. I'm not going to read all of this. Let me get to a key point here, and I'm going to wrap up. This is Aaron Elhake, who's shut down all what we see when they try to say that they try to play it off by saying that the men, that's what they're trying to say, that the Ashkenazi women points all of them European, right? It's a number of things that they try to do to kind of like throw the sin off of them. But Aaron Elhake shuts all of that down right here. Aaron Elhake, a geneticist at the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. He's an Ashkenazi Jew, and he is a geneticist, a world-renowned geneticist, thinks so. And recently published study in the Genome Biology, he is calling for a rewrite of commonly held assumptions about Jewish ancestry. Instead of being primarily descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel, present-day Jewish populations finds Elhake primarily of the children of a Turkish people who lived in what is now Russia, north of Georgia, east of Ukraine. This civilization, the Khazars, converted from tribal religions to Judaism between the 7th and the 9th centuries. The controversy cut into by Elhake's work runs deep, far past the lab bench among some circles. His conclusions are bound to be unpopular. This is the first scientific paper that proved the Khazarian hypothesis and reject the Rhineland hypothesis, he says, and not within 40 years of research. Although his findings will not be welcome in all circles, Elhake's interest is more medical than political. All I want is to help my colleagues who are studying genetic disorder, he says. I hope this work will open up a new era in genetic studies where population stratification will be used more. All right. But this is the key point that he goes on to say here, because he was driven by what? Trying to find out why his people have so many higher level of genetic disorders. Right, there's higher than the average among other communities. But let's see what he says right here. Previous studies had, for example, combined the question of similarity among and between Jewish populations and the question in ancestry and relatedness to non-Jewish populations. Elhake viewed these questions separately. Jewish communities are less homogeneous than is popularly thought, he says, with Jewish communities along the former Khazarian border showing the most heterogeneity. His second question centered on ancestry when comparing Jewish communities to their non-Jewish neighbors, Caucasus or Levant. In other words, as you see here, look at what it says, Caucasus or Levant, and you see in the parentheses, Middle East, and the Middle East is Northeast Africa. Populations which is closest to the so-called Jews, to the Jews. All Eurasian Jewish communities are closer to Caucasus population, he writes, with Central European Jews closer to Italian non-Jews as the exception. Not one of the 8 evaluated Jewish populations were closer to Levant. In other words, African population, Northeast African populations. Let me read it again. Not one of the 8 evaluated Jewish populations were closer to Northeast Africa, which they call the Middle East now, Levant populations. They know who they are not. They know who they are. Let me say that again. They know who they are. They know who they are not, family. Come on, family. Let's wrap this up. I'm going to give you one more source here, right? This is from their own source, The Forward. This is a 1948 publication. Look at what it says about their DNA. it says Ashkenazi Jews often find themselves in the peculiar situation of being 90% Ashkenazi Jewish and 99% European. So it's saying that their DNA will come back of them being 99% European, and out of that 99% European, on the average, 90% of that DNA is Ashkenazic. So this is telling you at best 1%. Right outside of that, if they want to make any type of connection anywhere. I encourage you guys to go back and look at the video I uploaded with Tucker Carlson, the full video that he was sitting down with what's his name? I can't think of his name now. Mike Huckabee. And you'll see the breakdown there. I give some information there really of the Limba elder Kohen Hamadishi, who transitioned. He was an elder for many of us in this awakening. And he explains how they tried to, make adjustments to the DNA to try to minimize their results. At best, when the 1948ers did their DNA, at best 1.2%. But theirs came back, the initial test was 24%. Then they made some adjustments to it, test them again, and it went to 48%. Test them again, then it went to 74, 75%. And then they test them again and then come back with their results. Didn't give them their official results. Come on, family. Did not give them their official results. And guess what, family? That means that I have, according to DNA, I'm 5 generations removed from the Limba. Also, we see the Igbo in our DNA. That means we're going to definitely be a much higher percentage than any of them. They're not even going to be close to ours. But guess what? We are 100%. That's what I'm getting at. Don't get caught up in these little percentages, because we're not little percentages. We are descendants of ancient Israelites, and they know it. But look at what they say real quick, and we're going to wrap this up. All right. 90% Ashkenazi Jewish, 99% European. Sephardic Jews may be told they are mostly Middle Eastern and North African, and less than 10% Ashkenazic. And that's a whole nother deception with the Sephardic. That's another discussion. Stuart Schaffman, a travel writer and blogger who writes under the name, I'm not going to read that here for the sake of the vulgarity here, said he brought a kid from 23andMe because even though his family insists they are exclusively Jewish, he thought there was a possibility that he had some non-Jewish ancestry. I was curious because you never know, Schaffman said. Family stories are just stories. Schaffman, who learned that he is 99.8% Ashkenazi Jewish, said the test hasn't made much of a difference on the sense of Jewish identity. Look at what he says. Judaism really informed who I am. So he's saying it doesn't matter. Even though he has no genetic ties to the ancient Israelites, he's saying it's the religion that defined him. Come on, family. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So he says, Judaism really informed me who I am and my values and my worldview, Schaffman said. 23andMe hasn't made me more or less Jewy at all. I'm just Jewy. However, Schaffman added he's Jewy and white, while others or other Jews like Sephardic, Ethiopian Jews can't claim that distinction. He's an ethnic minority, but a white one nonetheless. Look at what it says here. This is an article. I get all the benefits of white privilege, he acknowledged. What is he saying? What does he mean? See, he get to say that he's Caucasian and get all the benefits of being Caucasian, but then with the label of Semitic or Shemitic, right? Because we know Shemitic is a subgroup under Afro-Asiatic. So he get to say that he is white and black at the same time, if you want to use the institution of race. Now, we know that Shemitic started out as being a group, a linguistic group, but then they added the entry of identity, physical identity. So guess what? That means that all of those under the Afroasiatic, you have to look at the actual lineage. So Shemitic, right, is a group. And the so-called, the Shemitic is a subgroup under Afroasiatic. Come on, family, it's just that easy, just that simple. So how are they able to continue to fool the entire world? Remember, we said that fourth beast, not just them, because, that means that all the religions are in cahoots. The 1948ers got support from the Christian circle. All the Abrahamic faiths, they worked in cahoots with one another. They understand the importance of imagery. Let me stop right here. I'm going to stop right here. Yeah, I'm in geek mode. I'm going to have to take it down. It's late, family. I've been going longer than what I said. I was going to end at 11. It's been 2.5 hours. So I want to thank you guys, family, for the love and support. I appreciate you guys for being on. And we'll pick up next weekend. I'll deal with this article right here. Negro who could write Hebrew. I got several articles similar to this, right? But we'll deal with this next weekend. All right. So I want to say this again. There's something special about you, Judah. Don't let anyone put you down. Something special about you, Israel. This is why they are doing what they do. They know that we are the people of the book, the same ones that are asking everyone to prove who they are via DNA. Let's tell them, show your DNA. Like Tucker Carlson said, show your DNA. Matter of fact, let me break this as we wrap up. Let me share this as we wrap up. And matter of fact, what I'm going to close out with, the Tucker Carlson asking for a DNA, and we'll just call it a wrap. So with that being said, family, according to Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 and 14, the Most High gave these words to Moses to give to the Israelites. He said, "Fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of Yahweh." These Egyptians that are that's really coming against us, right? Trying to undermine us, these 1948ers and all these different governmental systems, wherever we scattered to across this globe, the four corners, saying that they will not have power over us ever again. The Most High will fight for us, but here's the kicker. We have to hold our peace. Can't go back, can't stay here, keep moving forward. Shalom.
Is there a reason that the Jewish people that represent, and I want to get back to this because you didn't let me finish a while ago, they represent 0.2% of the world's population. In the entirety of the world, there are about 16 million Jews total. And 8 million of them live here. The rest live mostly in New York or South Florida and a few other places.
Okay.
So this is a small population of people. They have connection to this land, historically, biblically.
Do they?
Yes, they do.
If Bibi's family, we know they lived in Eastern Europe. There's no evidence they ever lived here. He's not religious.
But
in what sense?
How do we know
that? Do you have his family tree? No, we don't.
Do you?
Bunch of Aryan-looking people that comes from Eastern Europe and pretends that God gave them the land 2,000, 3,000 years ago. Right. And oh no, we're the real Jews.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14, verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was black. Abraham, born in the city of a black man, called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was the... Jacob had 12 sons. For real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these
children of Israel.